first time, and it'll help you understand a little bit more about why I want to continue. I moved into my house in 1998, literally out of the dorm at Georgia Tech and into the house that I now live in and have purchased. And I would watch the street and I would see women walking down the street with laundry and little kids in the street because there was no sidewalk. They were walking to the corner laundromat. And it bothered me that they just weren't safe. They're trying to meet a basic need of having clean clothes and yet weren't safe getting there. So I called City Hall and said, how can we get sidewalks on MLK so that pedestrian safety can be improved? And I was met with a comment that I really didn't appreciate, which was, are you going to pay for it? And I said, well, isn't that what our property taxes are for? And I decided at that point that I would go downtown to a city council meeting and make my request. And that was my first encounter with local government and got involved. And then a couple of years later, that council member that sat in that seat decided he didn't want to run again. And I was asked, was I interested? And yes, I was. And since then, I've been able to work with the council to not only make sure that we have sidewalks, not just on MLK, but in lots of other places for pedestrian safety. But I've been able to work on a lot of things, including investment in those neighborhoods that seemed to not have the same amount of investment. Lots of things have been done that I'm very proud of over those years, but there's still work to do. Mainly affordable home ownership and housing opportunities. A lot of people think of it as an altruistic thing, but it's really economic development. I had the chief of police tell me once that they lost an employee because they couldn't find a house they could afford in Newnan. And where they found a house, they applied for a job at that police department. Can you imagine how many more people in our community who are essential workers like that, who are going to leave our community or not be able to move into our community to do the jobs we need done because they don't have the ability to pay such high prices for home ownership? We have got to, as an economic development initiative, look at ways to tackle our affordable homeownership challenge right now. We've got a good start on us. We formed the Newnan Urban Redevelopment Authority back in 2008. And within the last 3 years, we've had more than $10 million allocated to housing. We currently have funding for 31 houses and 28 home repairs. That's coupled with that is inclusive of the $4.6 million that Senator Warnock sent to the city with discretionary funding. We used ARPA funds and we've used other grant funding. So we have a really great head start, but there is more work to be done. And I think that there's a place for our business community, and I want to be part of leading that effort. Every day, I work with Habitat for Humanity, a nonprofit. It's not the one here in Newnan. It is the one that covers Fayette, Clayton, and Henry. But that is what I do. That is my background, as you know, in architecture and planning, and working for the third largest builder in the world. I think this is the time for us to really address it. The chamber took us on a tour of Greenville, South Carolina, and I asked them a pointed question. If you knew you would be as successful as you would be when you were planning all of this, what would you do? And their first answer without hesitation was pay more attention to affordable workforce housing. And I think that we're at that point where we really need to do that. I bring the ability to think critically. as passionate as I can be, I'm actually a very logical thinker. I think in plans. I don't like to do things haphazardly. I'm a builder. We don't build a house without a plan. We shouldn't build a city without one either. And so that's one of the things that I hope that we can do and that I've been advocating for many years is a comprehensive growth plan. That includes an annexation plan, that includes a transportation plan and looking at our infrastructure and roads and all of that. And that way we all know, and working with the county to do that. Those are aspirations that I have right now that I think will help our community grow in the right way. I am someone who has a different perspective than a lot of the council members that are up there now. I live in a different neighborhood. I come from different life experiences. I come from a different generation than most of them. I think that having that diversity of thought, of perspective, ideas, and experiences really does matter in decision making within our city. I think it helps me because there are a lot of things, as you know, with government, nothing gets done very quickly. And a lot of times the groundwork has to be laid and the knowledge base. And there's a lot to learn. This isn't something you walk into day one and know everything you need to know to get the job done. And because of this experience, I am ready because I am doing it now. We've spent a lot of time, I've personally spent a lot of time working on relationships in our community and working on understanding the challenges that we are facing. And that work, I would love to have the opportunity to continue. I think that having the willingness to meet them at the table and the county having the willingness to meet us at the table is a first step. And finding those commonalities. Fortunately, I'm on a committee right now working with the county. George Alexander and myself were the council appointees since it was our district at the time to work with county and the development authorities and other bodies to try and figure out how we best move forward with some of our downtown projects. I think there's a wonderful opportunity for synergy here with the county properties and the city properties to make a cohesive design for downtown, which of course is leveraged on the strengths that I have as a designer. So I think that's a good opportunity there to start those conversations about how we can work better together. I think that the biggest strengths that we have are how we have held on to our personality so far as a community. A lot of communities that are suburbs of Atlanta, for the most part, kind of feel the same in some ways. Newnan has maintained our charm. We're not a small town anymore, but we still kind of feel like one. And I think that there are some measurables there that we need to define so that we can keep those things that make people want to be a part of this community. And for those of us who've been here a while, maintain what we love about our community. I think that we have been hit with a 1-2-3 punch over the last 3 years. We've had COVID, we've had the economic pressures of housing prices and goods going up. And then of course we had one of only 10 EF4 tornadoes in Georgia history hit us. And those things have contributed to an uptick in homelessness, an uptick in crime, and an uptick in trying to figure out what we're going to do about our workforce. We have CEC, we have the University of West Georgia's satellite campus, but businesses are still finding it hard to find workers. And there's a lot of things that lead up to that. So we've got to address housing, we've got to address crime, and we've got to address the homelessness, which is also a part of housing. Well, I can tell you the crime issue has been one of the forefront things that we've been dealing with. Over the years, we've had crime in various areas of our community, and the neighbors have really been the key to getting that taken care of. I can recall back in 2014, for instance, we had a series of shootings happen during that time, and I called together a crime task force, got people in the room. I didn't ask anybody for permission, it just needed to be done. And I had several people come in, and we eventually hired a consultant to help us deal with methods of how to deal with those criminal activities. And we've had success. The crime rate has gone down in Chalk Level. But unfortunately, when you concentrate in one place, it moves to another. And so we're constantly trying to figure out, okay, where's the next spot going to be? Unfortunately, it's someone else's neighborhood. And we've got to move in there and do the same things we did to help the people when they needed it in Chalk Level and in Rocky Hill. Well, I would really love to see 57 East Broad Street come to fruition. I mean, we've been working very hard. As a matter of fact, that county-city joint task force that I'm a part of, the catalyst for that was 57 East Broad Street. It was, we've got a huge piece of property that we've invested in, and we're right in the middle of downtown with other projects that the county is looking at. Let's all get together and talk about ways that we can work together and how our projects can be complementary and benefit all citizens. And that is something I'd really like to continue to work on. I'd like to think that we have developed good working relationships and conversations have begun, that a disruption in that leadership, especially with both of us, especially now that George is not going to be there, I think having a steady voice in that room from the city will be essential to making that project go forward. I think that people need to know that some of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of are my investment in youth. We have the Newnan Youth Council, which is an almost 15-year-old organization where 450 students, more than 450 students, have come through that project. And out of that, we now have one elected official, Andrew Copeland, on the school board. He was the first vice president of the Newnan Youth Council. And that coming full circle for us is a huge deal because that's the point. We want to raise our next generation of leaders, and it's working. That was one of those things. I went to a national conference and met some people from Georgia who had a youth council and showed us how successful theirs was and brought the idea here. And have been very active in that for all that time. Howard Warner Community Center. We now have the Boys and Girls Club located in that center, and it is used by a lot of different people. It was one of those projects that easily could have not happened, and that historic school could have been lost. But the neighbors in that neighborhood kept going after it. I feel like I was the person that championed that on our city council, and when George Alexander and Bob Coggin both got on board, it moved forward. Lynch Park Pool. That was one of those projects that in a council retreat, we had talked about maybe moving it, creating a splash pad there and creating another pool somewhere else. And I advocated vehemently that we keep that pool in that neighborhood. And now it is one of the shining stars in our almost largest park. It used to be our largest park until C.J. Smith got renovated. So those investments in our youth have been successful. The housing impact, I think I told you that already, where we have a jump start on trying to create more affordable homeownership opportunities, because this isn't rentals that we're talking about. This is homeownership and creating those opportunities. And I hope to be able to work with more community leaders in creating organizations or funds or things like that. We found some other examples in other cities that are working. I was really excited to hear some of those successes at the Fort Coweta meeting yesterday.
Okay.
So I really would like to do that. And then I think that the other thing that I'm most proud of is bringing an opportunity for a more diverse citizenry to participate in local government. You know, I made history as the first Black woman to be elected to Newnan City Council, and we're almost a 200-year-old city. But it didn't stop with me. I advocated for us to have the first woman appointed to the Newnan Water and Light Commission, and at the time, it had been a 104-year-old organization. And they've been better because of her presence. The municipal court judge, Rufus Smith, became our first Black municipal court judge. And that was something that I advocated for. And I think what it really boils down to as far as diversity is concerned is that we've got a lot of smart, skilled people in our community, but if you aren't in the same social networks as those who are in authority, you don't know that there are opportunities, and they don't know you and your skill set to be able to build and utilize the talent that we have in our community.